Okay, welcome tonight to the Let's Talk Budgets first event in Park City. I'm so thankful that you guys have shown up. We have a lot of elected officials in here today. We have Mr. Mayor John Lanier. Yes, I said it right. Councilmember Kyle Nordick from Park City, also Councilmember Brandy Bailey, and then we have Kelly Stevens is the finance manager for Mays, and then Mayor Pat, do you want to wave your hand? He's from the mayor of Mays, and then our board members, we have 4 of them here tonight. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to garner information, the first of hopefully 4 or 5 events. You'll notice over here to the your right side of the room, the north side of the room, we have boards that are really designated per funding stream. And you'll notice what is listed to the right-hand side is what that topic encompasses, and then you'll have the total amount at the back, the very first one. So the idea is for you, after this presentation or during the presentation, to get up, take a whole sheet of stickies, and you can put a whole sheet of stickies on one if you want. There's no limit to how many dots you can put, but this is going to have a visual representation of kind of really how hard it is to allocate money because everything needs to be funded. But then hopefully by the time this is all done, leading up to the budget adoption in August, we'll see a representation of what District 4 thinks is important when it comes to each one of these budget items. So with that, Zach, you want to? Okay. We'll have Philip Frazier come up and call the meeting to order, and we'll get the official business of the District 4 Advisory Board out of the way, and then we'll call up Lindsay Poe-Rizzo, our CFO.
All right, so thank you for that welcome, Lacey. So officially call the meeting to order. Next on the agenda is meeting minutes from April 11th. Do we have anybody on the board that saw any revisions or needed any corrections? No? In that case, I would entertain a motion to approve. There's a motion. Do I have a second? All right. All in favor? Aye. Raise your hand. All right. We have a unanimous pass. That brings us to the Sedgwick County budget. So, on your way out of here, Lindsay.
Yeah, Lindsay. So just real briefly, we at the county are having our budget hearings. Today we had public safety, and those are all live streamed online. So if you want to go back and look at all the presentations from each designated department from public safety, you could do that from today. We're having budget meetings all the way up until the end of this month, I believe. So that's our last workshop day. But Lindsay is going to present some really great information, and then when she is finished, if Park City wants to come up, if you want to come up and talk about your budget in any way, shape, or form, or mention anything at all, I'm so appreciative that you guys were able to host this, and you have a really great turnout of your council tonight too. So, and then we're going to have an interactive session that you'll have to get your cell phone out and log into the minty.com, which is at the top of that up there. I think it's also on the purple sheets, and then we'll just have a really quick interactive session and then an open discussion. So hopefully we'll be on, quickly run through this tonight, but here's Lindsay Poe-Rizzo, our smart CFO.
Oh, thanks. All right, good evening, everybody. And this is kind of weird because I'm real short, so I can barely see over the laptop here, so bear with me. So as Commissioner Cruz said, I am the CFO for Sedgwick County. And oops, hang on. I cheated. I jumped ahead. There we go. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. We are in the process of talking about our 2023 budget. Like all of you, we have to pass our budget in August. What the commission is seeing right now are 2023 budget requests at their hearings that Commissioner Cruz referenced. And so you can see on this chart exactly how our 2023 budget, at least at this point, bearing in mind it's not a recommended budget. Okay, sorry, thank you. Okay. You guys do have fancy things here. I'm just not used to them. So you can see that by far, public safety at 37.7% is the greatest portion of our operating budget, which makes sense when you think that we offer countywide 911, countywide EMS. We also have our Regional Forensic Science Center, Sheriff, Corrections, all of those things out of public safety. About 3% of our budget is debt service, called bond and interest. You can see that public works is about 7%. Now, the reason that that looks so different is because this is our operating budget. We do have a much larger capital budget. The commission has not yet heard that, so that's not a part of this request. You can see public services is also a significant portion of our budget, and that is also funded with grants, not just property tax dollars, and we'll show that here in a bit. And then you can see some of the other areas. Of course, general government is substantial at $145 million, but more than $20 million of that is sitting in contingencies, and we don't typically access that. So when we look at our budget by type, you can see the dark blue is our tax portion of the budget, light blue is grants. But of course, everybody always likes to talk about mill levy rates and property taxes, right? So let's look at what those functions are. So if we take that first slide that we looked at by function and just look at the property tax funded portion of that, you can see on here how that breaks out. And when we look at it from that perspective, public safety by far eclipses anything else. If you remember, public services was a pretty substantial number. Well, it's much less when you take out those grant dollars. So these are the specific services. When we look at those different chunks of the pie, you can see how many different areas of our budget are actually funded through each of those. So pretty much everything administrative, everything from fleet to finance to our county treasurer, is all funded from general government. You can see public safety and how that breaks down. Community development, I think, is pretty interesting. I don't know that people necessarily realize that the county gives a significant portion of funding to the Extension Council. So that 4-H Extension Center is actually our facility. We do some economic development. We also levy out of our 29.4 mills. We have 1.5 that is specifically dedicated to Wichita State University. And that comes from state law, that then there was an MOU that was adopted, and so now that's countywide. You can see our public works, our public services, culture and recreation, of course, includes the zoo, exploration place, and some other programs. So doing a little bit of a deep dive, sorry guys, into what District 4 looks like. Obviously, the population is just about 105,000. We know that that was updated after the most recent redistricting that the commission approved in December. The average household income as of 2020 was $50,000. You have 151 square miles in this district, and your assessed property value for all of the properties located within Park City is at $978 million. So it actually is 19% of the overall assessed value for the county. So pretty nice split when you think about 5 commissioners. So one of the things we wanted to talk about is, before we get into the details of why Commissioner Cruz is wanting your feedback on the budget, we just kind of want to talk about where we've been. So when Commissioner Cruz came onto the bench in 2019, this is where we'll start. So with our 2019 budget, it was a flat budget, which we have had flat budgets since we went through $20 million of budget cuts in 2011 and 2012, which, as you saw, $20 million is not insignificant when we talk about our overall tax funds. We had about a 2.5% flat pay adjustment. We had some bonuses. We started to invest in community collaborators. I know that was a big initiative that Commissioner Cruz had identified and worked on. Then in 2020, we had another 2.25% flat pay adjustment. We had a small adjustment to our pay structure, and then we were supposed to do some targeted pay adjustments. I'm sure you've all heard about the significant vacancies we have at Sedgwick County, especially in certain pockets of our organization. And so we were going to try to start targeting that. But if you remember, in April 2020, Sedgwick County had the unfortunate distinction of having the highest unemployment rate in the state at just about 20%. And so with that and the impacts of COVID and COVID lasting longer than anyone thought it would, we had to unfortunately defer that pay adjustment for employees. So there were some positions added through that budget, but mid-year in 2020, we had to do furloughs. We had both voluntary and involuntary furloughs, and I think it's easy to forget how traumatic and scary 2020 was because we didn't know what was going to happen. We did some COVID stipends, what we called hero pay, for some of our employees who had to come to work and did not have an option to telework or anything like that. So we did that for a couple of pay periods until we realized that this thing was going to stick around longer than we thought. We did use that 1.25% pool that we had set aside to try and do pay adjustments, to instead do a year-end bonus to try and do something for employees. And then, of course, we received CARES funding of $99.6 million. We got state Spark funding of $9.3 million. We used that to fund the public health response. In 2020, that looked like testing. There weren't vaccines yet, but we had the drive-through testing, helped stand up the WSU MDL. I think some folks in here received some chunks of funding through that CARES funding. So in 2021, again, this budget was recommended in June of 2020. So we still had no idea where we were going to go. So we didn't do any pay adjustment for employees. We didn't buy or invest in our technology. We added a few things that we felt were of critical importance. So things like an epidemiologist for the health department, diversity coordinator, as well as permanently funding the ICT1 program, which I'm sure you're all aware is our joint program with the city of Wichita that sends out a paramedic, a social worker, and a law enforcement officer to try and keep people get treatment on the spot instead of having to take them to an emergency room or the jail. So we did eventually implement some critical pay for some areas of our organization. What that means is it's short-term funding. It's a % of a person's pay, but they only get to keep it while we're in critical status. And so we have been operating on that basis really since the middle of 2021 as our vacancies were growing. So then we did premium pay because, again, employees hadn't gotten raises. We weren't able to give them the raise the year before. Through that 1.25% adjustment, we were seeing some incredible attrition, and so we had hoped to use that premium pay to get people to stay until we could get to 2022, when we would have reclassifications through the budget process, trying to get people classified based on their job duties, not necessarily a market pay adjustment, but just trying to get some of those hardest hit areas some pay adjustments. So we did that in 21, and for 22, this is our 10th year of flat budgets, where departments have not had any growth unless they have come and made very specific strategic requests to increase their budgets. And so the compensation focus was there, but unfortunately, just like I'm sure you're all experiencing, we just can't keep up with pay. We have folks in our organization who make less than $15 an hour, and it's real easy to go to our friends here at Amazon, Spangles, anywhere, and earn a little more money and have a little bit less stressful of a job, maybe sometimes even 8 to 5. And so why we talk about that, and I'll move through these fairly quickly, but basically since the Great Recession, our tax-supported funds, the expenses from those, have gone up 21%. If you look at CPI in that time, or the measure of inflation, it went up 27%. So we're not staying up with that. We have basically kept all of our FTEs flat in that time, but our overtime costs are up significantly, 29%, because that work still has to get done, even without those people. Our property tax levy is up 24%, and as I'm sure you all have been impacted by various state actions and other things, the property tax reliance for Sedgwick County's budget has increased significantly in that time, from 51% to 57%. So our assessed value overall has increased 32%, inflation has increased 27%, and yet these next two measures I think are fascinating, because I'm a big nerd. So average home value has increased 41%, while personal income in Sedgwick County has increased 42%. That's great for our citizens. If you look at something like inflation increasing 27%, but income has increased 42%, that means that they're making a little more money, and hopefully maybe a little more of that is discretionary. So again, our tax levy has increased 24%. The mill levy rate at that time was about 31.3 mils. It's decreased. And then price of government, which is a measure of government revenues relative to personal income, has actually decreased quite a bit in that time. We have operated 16 programs on behalf of the state, everything from aging to tax administration. We've kept those costs relatively flat. State aid for the programs, though, has decreased by about a quarter. Medicaid revenue has increased almost half, and other program income, our way to generate charges for service, has increased 1%. So again, that's a big reason why that property tax reliance has shifted. So the state, I think this has impacted you all probably too, local ad valorem tax reduction and city county revenue sharing were things that the legislature did back in 04, 05, 06. They were going to give us a portion of their state sales tax on certain things in exchange for keeping different dollars of ours. And so then it went unfunded because of the recession. And so at this point, we're at about $60 million in unfunded local ad valorem tax reduction, even though that is something that's still on the books. $37.8 million from that city county revenue sharing. Another thing that's significant is that the state, as an economic development move, right, exempted all commercial machinery and equipment, which is great for our businesses, but what that means is then property taxes tend to shift to other areas, which for us are residential and utility, state assessed utility. And then of course the state eliminated the mortgage registration fee, which after all of the, what is the word I'm looking for? The refinancings here the last year or two because of low interest rates have cost us significantly. So what does this mean? Right now our employees have seen growth in that time of 22%. When we calculate benefits, that drops it to 20%. But again, inflation is 27%, has increased in that time. So we have not been able to keep up for our employees with just the costs going up. So based on what the commissioners have seen and heard so far, our financial forecast includes an 8% pay pool for next year, 4% in years thereafter. We used our adopted CIP from last year, which we will be updating as we go through the process. And then we have a few other pockets, of course. This year we have a 27th pay period, so that's an extra $5 million we get to pay. We don't know what compensation will look like yet, even though we have that pool. 8% is great, but when you think that inflation is 8.5% as of February, that's maybe not the right answer, but we will see. There's no additional funding for new programs. What we call, when I talked about having flat budgets and they had to come make strategic requests, those are called decision packages. So any of those that have come before the commission so far this year are not included. And you can see there's a number of other things. We are planning, despite what everyone has seen and read, I'm sure by now, about our home values. You know, my appraisal went up quite a bit. We are only planning for 4%, and that is based on what the appraiser has told us about other movement in the market. And then you can see we're expecting maybe more moderated revenues after a strong year this year and last year with all that federal stimulus money that everyone had. So we've already talked about the pay pool. You can see a couple other specifics that we're assuming. So this is kind of what that looks like. So the blue line here are expenditures. The red line is revenues. So based on all of those assumptions we just talked through, this is what Sedgwick County's financial forecast looks like without any kind of corrections or adjustments based on everything we talked about. So you can see that we are just barely exceeding our revenues in every year. But that is not necessarily bad news, because you can see on this chart that unlike when we were going through 2011, where we thought we were going to be insolvent in 5 years without those significant budget cuts, we will actually maintain our minimum fund balance through the life of the forecast. So we started budget discussions last week. On May 24th, we're going to have a BOCC budget workshop that's going to focus on two things. First, ComCare is going to a new funding model, and so we're going to talk with commissioners about that. Obviously, behavioral health is a high priority. We also, on that date, will talk about the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Coalition requests of the county. On June 7th, now that the task force that was focused on the investigation and review for Cedric Lofton, we will see what those requests are. Commissioners will hear more about that on June 7th. We will have a firm deadline of June 15th for what goes in the recommended budget. And then the manager will present that on July 13th. Right now, the two hearings that you see listed here are very, very tentative dates. We will have this conversation with commissioners at the end of their budget hearing sessions to see when they want to do hearings and how many and where. And then right now we are scheduled to have budget adoption on August 24th. And as we go through hearings, if other things pique the commissioner's interest, we obviously will be happy to schedule some discussions. Our information, as always, is available on our website. And as soon as the recommended budget is presented to the commission, we will make it public there. There will be online public forum in addition to coming. So I apologize, I took longer than I meant to. You're all still awake, congratulations. Are there any questions I can answer? Yes, sir.
So the Juvenile Corrections Advisory Board meeting Friday, listening to the budget talk and the personnel issues, the governor appropriated money, and there's $500,000 sitting, but the county is stuck in not being able to give it to employees to raise salaries.
Yet.
So there is a solution in the works?
Yes.
This red tape that's going to cause the loss of that?
No, we desperately do not want to lose whatever help we can give to corrections. They're in critical staffing levels. In their budget hearing today, I don't know if that's what you saw, but we had asked everyone to do an organization chart. And if they were in a certain staffing threshold, we wanted them to make that box on the org chart red. And 80% of those boxes were red today. They just cannot stay staffed. Like you mentioned earlier, the juvenile residential, if I could talk, that would help. The juvenile residential facility has had to close and consolidate in with the juvenile detention facility because we just can't get staff. So HR and finance right now are working through which positions can be affected by that money, because we know we have this one-time money for April through June. We do not yet have any idea what the rules are for July. And so we're trying to figure out what we can do to help employees without setting them up for potentially having to take any money away or something when we finally get the rules for July 1st. But we are working through it. ComCare, I mentioned, has a new funding model. Supposedly they will get reimbursed for actual expenses for certain services. So there are opportunities where we may take them off of the county's pay plan and put them on something else just to try and get that shored up. So I promise we are working hard on that. I've had probably 3 meetings in the last 3 business days on that alone.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Bored them to tears. Oh, yes, sir.
How much do you calculate a mill is per $100,000? How does that affect a house? with its property tax?
So that's a great question. If we had 100,000, I think we use typically about 150,000 as the standard these days. Let me see if I can find a calculator on here, and I'll just do the math for you. We know residential assessments are, oh, Robin, help.
Yes.
Oh, wait, do I have my phone up here?
it's behind.
Yeah.
It's behind.
Oh. So we're gonna take 150,000 times 0.115, which is our assessed value rate for homes. That gives us 17,250. And so then if, so like when I'm doing the county's mill levy rate of 29.4, I'll do 0.029. So we're gonna do 0.001, $17.25 for a $100,000.
Per month?
No, and that's total cost.
So that's a savings
That's
to the.
1 mil.
1 mil reduction is roughly $17 a year.
For a $100,000 home,
For a
obviously.
150.
And then 150, right?
Okay.
So 150.
Oh, well, but I did the calculation for,
Oh, she did it for 100.
Oh.
so now, let's take it times 1.5. $25.88, $25.88 on a $150,000 home. So yes, 1 mil is not particularly significant to a residential.
So it's not that big of a,
homeowner.
$2 a month. $2 a month. For $150,000.
Which is right around our average home value right now in the county, after the last few years of strong growth.
We're being asked to lower our mill levy by some citizens. The assessed value continues to go up. We're not doing that, Sedgwick County's doing that.
Well, and actually, I'll give you the line that commissioners like to use. It's the state doing it. PVD.
Yeah, it is the school.
We're good at passing the buck,
Yeah,
aren't we?
Yeah. Well, so go ahead. What's the line?
The line is the state property valuation division makes sure that we are competitive across the state and we have to stay within a 10% margin on either side. So that is the party line. But yes, your point is understood. When Mark Clark, our appraiser, presented to the commission a couple months ago, the average increase that we saw in residential property was 7%. I think what we're seeing on the flip side, which is why when we talked about that 4% assessed value, what we're hearing is that manufacturing, aerospace, which is calculated a little differently, right, especially on the personal property front, has decreased significantly. And so that's why they think there's going to be this offset to all the growth we're seeing on the residential side, is this impact of being so invested in aerospace in our community and that impact. Because the 4% is hard for me to grasp when we've seen what we've seen on the residential side. So yes, I mean, the impact of 1 mil to a homeowner is not necessarily significant, but it is definitely significant dollars to the governing body.
And we have a great sheet that really lines out the cost of government for a number of years that I'd be happy to share. And perhaps we might share that at the next one.
Absolutely.
So we're just learning how we can make this better the whole time. And it kind of breaks it down with a dollar bill too, to kind of show you, I think Brandy, you have that too, right? You probably have it in your pocket, right? Hands up. So does anybody else have any questions for Lindsay? I wanted to mention, when she showed the history of, I asked her to just do since 2019, because she went all the way back to 2008 when we had the Great Recession, and so I wanted to spare folks the time. But it is really interesting to see all the way back to 2008 how just the history of employee compensation for sure, because that's really what we're focused on this year, because of all of the open positions, because of the increased need for service as far as mental health care, addiction services, juvenile justice, all of those things that county government is responsible for. One little tidbit, I'm walking up here with these sheets because these are our budget books, or our budget programs that she sent out. And I'd like to provide these to you guys if you're interested in them. This is the original opening where we've been and what we're going to focus on financial forecast that she kind of went into, but it's really in depth if you want this PowerPoint. But the one that we did today, and I kind of got choked up a little bit. I couldn't even really articulate my question because the things that we do at the county are really heavy. Today we talked about the Forensic Science Center got up first, and
we in Sedgwick County take care of the death that happens. And that's it. For some reason, it was just super hard for me to even handle today. Out of all the things that we talk about quite frequently, these are really heavy topics that Sedgwick County public servants handle on a daily basis, which is why when you think about how much they get paid, some of them do jump ship because it's stressful and it's hard and they don't get paid enough. So one just real tidbit of an example, we have 2 pathologists, and autopsies in a given year, one pathologist should be doing about 250 autopsies. We have 2, and we have a caseload of 1,200. So those numbers are really staggering. We also have the investigators. So we have our medical investigators who go out on the scene and handle families, right? Families of gunshot victims, suicides, overdoses, and they go out and investigate it. The toll that it takes on them and just the sheer intensity of the work is very difficult. And that's why when we talk about this forecast, we talk about throughout the years how we have managed to try to give our employees raises. When I started in 2019, we were 14% behind market rate. That's pretty significantly less than what you could go in the private sector and make. And, we don't want to raise taxes, but people expect the same level of service. And if we don't have the employees to do the work, that's when service suffers. So hopefully we can do some things in the next coming years. And I really have to give props to our human resource folks, our management team, for really coming up with a pay plan that we were able to reclassify a lot of stuff last year. We were able to do something kind of significant. I know that our employees probably did appreciate it a little bit, but still, the work that we do, and at ComCare especially, it's difficult. And so we want to pay people what they're worth, and we want to retain the knowledge base that we have here in the county. So does anybody from Park City want to get up and chat for a second about your budget or what you guys are focused on this year? I'd love to hear from you if you'd like to. Thank you for being the spokesperson.
So I don't really have any budget points or anything. We're obviously starting the budget process ourselves, but first of all, I guess I want to welcome you guys to Park City. Thank you for coming, and thanks to our council members who came as well to show interest in at the county level of what's happening. We really just wanted to watch your process and kind of see. Obviously, COVID has created an issue the last few years in getting this part of it done. So, thanks to you guys. Thanks to you guys for your work and making that happen and open up some transparency to the public. So, that's all we have.
Thanks for hosting us today. Okay, so now everybody get your cell phones out, and we're going to do this interaction portion. And again, this is the first time we've done it, so if you can think of any improvements that we can make, we'd love to have them. Do you want to come and run it up here?
Yeah, let me get it started here. Actually, I'll put it back here.
Okay, so we're all going to log into this site. And your answers won't be tied to you, so don't feel bad. Your answers won't be tied to you. So the first question is, how much did you know about county budgets before this event? And it's the number up top, that code up there, you guys.
Or on the purple sheet.
3, 6. So we have 2 answers. We have more than 2 people in the room.
Commissioner Cruz, can you give me 1 second?
Yeah. We having a little trouble?
We're just trying to get it along.
Okay, great. So we have 5 total folks. And it's okay if you don't know anything. That's why we're here today. And a lot of us, I should know a lot, which I did put a lot. So when you guys are finished, and whoever wants to participate, don't feel like you have to, but it would be nice. We're gonna take this as a collective, like I said, hopefully throughout the whole next couple of months to see how many results we get. Huh?
Let me know when I go to the next one.
Are we ready to go to the next one? Yeah? Okay, let's go to the next one. And this is really open-ended. So what do you think of, what's a word that comes to mind when you think of budgets? Obviously money, like anything at all. So
Yeah.
timed out.
Just hit the mouse periodically.
There's no right or wrong answer to this at all. We're just trying to figure out what are some things that people think of when they, and then the more confusion. I actually wrote that earlier today. Was that mine from earlier?
No, it's.
Oh, okay, these are all new. Okay, good, yeah. Yeah. Okay, we all sort of shared our words. Okay, we can go on to the next one. And I think we have 3 more, and then, so public safety, as we mentioned, it was, so public safety encompasses the courts, so the 18th Judicial District, so the felony convictions, all of our domestic violence, all of those kinds of things. Our crime prevention fund, we also have Department of Corrections, our district attorney falls in here, our forensic science center that I just talked about. One interesting thing, there was a gentleman who was sleeping outside behind my house. I live very close to Broadway. And he died in the cold, and he was a homeless gentleman. And if you can't find the family members, the Sedgwick County Forensic Science Center goes and picks up bodies who are unclaimed. The unclaimed bodies are, and I hate to even talk about it like this, but it's up 30%. Of those who have passed away in Sedgwick County, and their bodies remain unclaimed. And so that is a part of our Forensic Science Center fund. We have to pay for those bodies to be properly, I don't want to say that word, properly handled in a way that's dignified and meaningful to the best that we can. And so that falls on taxpayers. Narcan pay, that's good. You know, they have our EMS folks and emergency management system folks are working with that. You know, other public safety. I wondered, is Park City, do you guys do CIT training for your law enforcement officers?
Define CIT?
Crisis intervention training.
No, we do not.
So that's something that we saw in the task force that's coming out. One of the things was instead of folks respond better to non-uniformed people. And that's one thing, that crisis intervention training, and then mental health and first aid training. When you have mental health crisis, getting folks calmed down and in a way that we can talk to them in a diligent and dignified way to help them with their next step instead of taking them to the ER, taking them to the jail. More prosecutors. Other things are the sheriff's office, courthouse, police, office of the medical director, our fire district, our EMS. Those are public safety. Has everybody put something down? Okay, we can go on to the next one, please.
Okay.
The next one is for public health. So we all saw, as a commissioner, I serve as one of the Board of Health members. We all kind of, for those in our community who weren't familiar with county government, they were over the past couple of years, just simply because of health measures. So public health also encompasses, I would say, ComCare. That's a part of public health. Our health department, obviously. We have one really interesting thing I thought was, we have those disease investigators who will go out and find other folks. So like sexually transmitted diseases, for example. We have folks who will track down folks. That's an interesting thing. If you guys haven't been to our health department over on West Central, that is where we're doing our COVID vaccination and testing. We did shut down our other vaccination and testing, but that's our public health. I'm going to put in my answers. Mental health hospitals, we are have just petitioned the state for a new mental health hospital. Right now, we have folks sitting in our jail who are waiting to stand competency evaluations. The last I checked, we had about 24 individuals who are waiting in our jail, awaiting a competency evaluation. And what that means is they are waiting to make sure that they can stand trial. Most of these folks are not well. They're very acutely ill, and there was one person who waited over 300 days to be evaluated. And so what happens during that time is somebody waits in our jail for way too long. We don't have a lot of interventions right now that we're doing that will really try to rehabilitate and help folks while they're there. They're really just kind of doing time. And that's one thing hopefully we'll be able to look into as far as what happens in our jail and the rehabilitation that could take place. But they don't get better, right? If anything, they only get worse by waiting so long. And so we need to make sure that we're taking care of them in a timely manner so that they can stand trial. One thing that I'm doing with in our jail right now, there's a couple of studies listed out that talks about art on the walls, something as simple as color. And I went into the jail last week with Brick Mob. They are a mural artist around town. You guys have probably seen some of their work. They do incredible things all over the county. But I got Sheriff Easter to agree to give us a space in the jail right outside of the health clinic. And we're going to put a mural on the wall. And so nature scenes, those kinds of, when you're stuck behind cement cinder block walls all day, nature scenes and color, it has been proven to reduce mental illness. It's violence. It creates a sense of calm and reduces anxiety. So, and I noticed, there was a deputy who was not having a good day, and he was he let me know it. And so by the time we were done, as he took me up to where the mural was going to be, I just simply asked him, what would help you to feel better? It's not just about the inmates in the jail, it's about the folks that work there too, because they're dealing with some intense individuals. We have, I don't know how many murders we have, alleged murders we have in our Sedgwick County jail right now, but we have some bad folks in there. And it's a difficult place to be, and you could read it on his face. But the moment we talked about what he wanted to see, it was really interesting how his mood changed and how he got his wheels turning around what he would want to see on that wall, because it wasn't just for inmates, it was for the folks who work there too. Okay, so I think we have one more, right? One more, and then, so the public works. Our environmental resources, all of our highways, we're talking about Specifically in District 4, we have a pretty dangerous road on Ridge and 45th up to North Ridge Road from about 45th Street. There's no shoulders on that road, so that's one example of some of the things that we're trying to work on to make sure that when people driving at night, they run off the road. That could be very dangerous, adding shoulders. But then we were talking about how do we incorporate more pedestrian-friendly roadways. When we build a bridge, according to Jim Weber, your county engineer, it should last for about 75 years. So when you think about 75 years from now, hopefully we'll have more folks that will be biking and walking, and it's a more pedestrian and person-centered way to build things rather than just infrastructure that's built for cars, although that's very important and we need to think about that. But what does the 75-year future hold? So I think that that's the end of that.
Yeah.
And this, as I said again, it's going to build upon each week. Next month, we're going to be in Valley Center, and so please tell your friends who live in Valley Center or who live in Park City who weren't able to join today so that we can really get a good snapshot. If you have not been able to put little dots down, or you want, because of the things that you've heard here today, you want to put more dots on public safety, feel free. You can put as many as you want. There's no limit. We don't have a mill levy that's set for dots. We just put them over there. But now I'd really like to just open it up for anything that you guys would like to talk about as far as what you've heard today, or suggestions on how to make this better for the next time. That's really the gist of this. So if anybody wants to, Zach, you want to come up and say a few words? Or do you guys have any questions? It's really kind of open-ended.
They can submit questions on their phone too here if they don't want to ask them out loud.
Right, so if you're shy, just type it on your phone. Yeah, Mark, did you have a question?
Well, thinking about the recruitment problems, have employee benefits remained competitive or been reduced in all of these flat budgets?
They haven't changed from, well, we did actually increase mental health care. It was 3 visits, and now we offer up to 12 visits, 1 per month. That was added to the benefits package. We are offering bonus pay in certain departments to try and recruit and hopefully get some folks interested in different departments because of a sign-on bonus. But as far as benefits, they've stayed pretty consistent and steady.
So health benefits have stayed,
Mm-hmm.
costs haven't
Mm-hmm. There was,
proportion that they were.
and there was something really interesting about our health. What was the health benefits information that we shared? What was that? Anybody have any other questions while I look at
Well,
this
I
up?
think, so one of the things that we talked about as a budget highlight was that we did shift our employee benefits to 3 different plans, like a high deductible HSA, premium, and base, so we give employees more choice. And we are, when we've gone through these analyses of compensation and everything, we are consistently scoring higher on our health benefits. Not our papers, because papers 3 is terrible, but on the health side, yes, we're very competitive. But now, since you were there, we offer, it's not Aflac, but it's something similar, some of those things. So we try to enrich that side and keep costs down when you're here.
Any other questions, comments? I really do want to, Brandy, do you have anything you'd like to say from the tag office perspective? I know that you've extended some hours. Do you want to come up and talk about that? She's like, no, I don't, but since you put me on the spot. I mean, you really done some good things as far as user friendliness, I think.
So I'm Brandy Bailey. For those of you who don't know me, I'm on Park City Council, but I'm also the county treasurer. So I operate the tag office and the property tax offices. For the tag office, so that isn't funded out of general government. That is funded by the fees that are pulled in from the tag offices. When you go to renew your vehicles or title, And what I've done is I took office in October, so trying to figure out, first I had to increase my morale so I could get people on board with some of the changes I wanted to make. So once I started building morale, we did change the office hours starting April 1st. We went from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. so that way people could come in before they went to work or stay a little later. But one big thing that we're seeing at the tag office is right now I'm down 13 employees. So staffing, it's hard to get people to come. It's hard to get people to show up to interviews when you schedule them. We did hire 5 people that started today. So so now I'm down still 8 people, but I have to get these people trained. Some other things we're looking at the tag offices is trying to fix my queue list system. Our queue list system is where you log in so you can get an appointment, essentially an appointment for the tag office. And right now, since we open at 7, our queue list system, it closes down at like 7:45 in the morning because we are having 10-hour waits at 7:45 in the morning. So when you consider that I'm down 13 employees and then we have all these waits, so people are upset about that. We're trying to be more efficient. We've changed, like I said, we changed hours, but in order to do that, I had to change staffing for people. So now I have flexible staffing. So some people work 10-hour days with a day off during the week. I have some people working 8 to 5, some people working 9 to 6. So you might come in at 5 o'clock and see I only have 6 people there, and then people are complaining because I've got empty desks. So I mean, it's just a big challenge right now. I'm looking at bringing in computers and putting those in the lobbies of the tag offices so that way people who come in that don't have access to a computer at home or don't have access to a smartphone, so more of our older population, we can assist them in renewing their tags at the computer instead of having to wait the 5-10 hours for a clerk to go up there. So I mean, we're just trying different things, and I've told my staff they're my experts. I need them to help me understand what was going to work, what's not going to work. So I'm trying to take all these ideas and make some big changes. I've even contemplated doing some Saturday hours, so maybe a couple Saturdays during the month. So that's next on my plate is to try to go there, and we just have lots of challenges. So and like in the money, that's the big thing is pay. Our starting pay for our tag office clerk is $14.66. And we hear people go to Target, they go to Walmart, they go to McDonald's and make $15 an hour. So they don't want to come work. And we are statutorily driven. And so we have to make sure we do your title work right. We have to do your renewals right. And if we don't, well, then that falls back on you. And we're running the office for the state. So any problems we have with our systems, they're the state system. So it falls on the county that the county isn't doing, a good job, but we've got state issues. So it's a big challenge right now. And but the biggest challenge is the employees, getting them to, even to come to work. That's huge too. I have call-ins like crazy. I mean, there was one day a couple months ago, I had 30 people call in one day. I mean, when I have 25 people at each office, but I have 30 people calling in on one day, I mean, how do I? So, yeah.
Well, in 8 months, I think you've really done a lot. I mean, this is a lot to take in. I mean, this is my 4th year and I'm still learning. So
yeah,
you've really done a lot in this short amount of time.
And we haven't asked for budget increases. We didn't when we did commission when we did our budget presentation. We didn't ask for a decision package. So we are still operating on the same dollar amount as what we have in the past. And fees, I mean, I can't raise the fees because statutorily I'm at the max on my fee levels. So when we talk about employee pay and we want to increase employee pay at the tag offices, I don't have no more money coming in.
Right.
So how am I going to pay these people? So then I'm going to have to come to the county and ask the county to subsidize through the general fund, so for property tax payers to pay the tag employees. So it's fun right now.
Well, and one thing I forgot to mention is we are moving
our county offices are moving, our administrative functions are moving. So Brandy, her office will be on the first floor technically or so of the Ruffin building. It's at Broadway and Douglas. But that means we have allocated about $9 million or so of ARPA money to renovate the court systems. And what that's going to allow us to do is to create some specialty courts. Jerry Moran was able to secure some funds for Senator Jerry Moran, was able to secure some funds for a veterans court. We already operate a drug court, and these specialty courts allow us to really do a lot of preventative stuff, rehabilitative stuff, rather than punitive. Which is what our system is really designed for. And, I'm a creative thinker. I've always been sort of big picture, like how can we reimagine this? And not just to reimagine it, but to reimagine it in a way that we're spending less money, getting a better result, if that's possible. But these specialty courts, I really think, will allow us to treat people in a different way and to care for them in a different way. So the county administration building is moving to the Ruffin building, and then that means that we are going to have to find a space for the new administration functions of the county. So whether it is, we just received a letter today requesting that they wanted us to be downtown in the core of the city to have equitable access for most citizens. There was a conversation about moving it out to Webb Road or moving it down south to 47th Street. And when we talk about doing business and doing business with the government and how most of these departments work together and interact it's all about the citizen experience, right? It's all about you guys coming in and being able to access your government in a way that works for you, because it's your place, it's your house, these are the things that we're here to serve the public, and that's why we're here. So that's coming down the pike. The other thing is our new crisis comm care expansion. We have yet to determine where that should go, and so that's a pretty big deal. Hopefully we'll be able to create a new space that, again, is around that prevention, around that rehabilitative. So those are some big things that are coming up. If anybody has any other questions, I'd love to hear them, but if not, anybody have any questions? Comments, concerns, suggestions on how to make this better? Mark.
I have a suggestion.
Please.
At our advisory board meeting on Friday, I threw it open because all of the entities there are having very similar problems about recruitment and the method of recruitment. One kid that was there said, well, you really need a broad social media approach and a call to action that ties to values and about what the value of public service, and to really try that, because what wasn't reaching them when you go speak in a classroom and things isn't broad enough. And we all thought that was a good idea.
That is a great idea. That's a great suggestion. We have to go where people are and speak to them in the language that they understand. We have to captivate people in this 15-second society that we live in now. Maybe sometimes it's even less than that. And it's important that we absolutely speak their language and meet them where they are, and entice them in a way that they will understand and want to participate. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I hope that we wrote that down. If not, I got it right here in my brain. Okay, so please get some stickers. If you haven't done the sticker exercise, please get some stickers. Thank you, Sean, and all of the Park City team for being here today. We are recording this, so we'll probably post this on a YouTube channel later. But again, appreciate your time and energy. Thank you, Akeem, and to your team for putting this all together. But I've no other questions. Our CAB board. You can just, whatever.
All right, so that brings us through the agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All right, all in favor of adjourning?
Thank you all. Appreciate you being here.